Hi everyone, my name's Beth and I'm here tonight to share a little bit about crafting with you. So my preferred craft of choice is knitting. I find it really calming and soothing, and it's nice that at the end you also have something tangible to hold on to. And so yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that. If you see my cat tonight, she's just being a little bit of a pain. But that's okay because her name is Pearl, and that's actually a kind of knit stitch. So she was named after one of my favorite hobbies. So first you're going to take your knitting needles, which have been provided to you. Mine are a little bit chewed up. I don't know if you can see from Miss Pearl thinking that she can knit. And then you're going to take your ball of yarn. And so there should be, when you pull the band off it, there should be a loose end that just comes naturally to you. So what we're going to be knitting over the next week and a bit together is just a simple scarf. And the reason why I enjoy knitting these scarves so much is because it's been a really stressful year, and I find that I'm not as creative as I normally would be. And it's really easy to be hard on myself for that and to, say why aren't I producing or being more creative with my time? But in reality, it's been a really tough year for everyone. So it's okay that if you're not having a super creative time, and if you just want something quick and simple and that feels like you're accomplishing something, and you're making something with your hands. So I've been doing these and actually donating them to local shelters around the city. So that's a really good way to give back to the community as well, if that's something you're interested in. So you're going to take your yarn. And we have Pearl here, who's probably going to jump up in a minute. You're going to take your yarn and you're going to take quite a long end, and you're going to loop it around 2 fingers. And see here, you're just going to, oh, there she goes. You're just going to pull it through like you're making a knot. And then you're going to pull up like that. So I'm going to do that again just for everyone to see. So you're going to loop it over your 2 fingers and you're going to pull it. Oh, that didn't really work. So loop it over your 2 fingers and pull it through just like a simple knot. And as you can see, this has some slide to it. So you're going to be able to slide it on to a knitting needle, which I have a little cat friend who's trying to knit with me. So you're going to slide that onto your knitting needle. And you can just leave your ball loose. It shouldn't unravel or cause any problems. You're just going to want to keep it in your lap or next to you on the couch or sofa or wherever you're sitting. And you're going to take your second needle and stick it through the back. So you can see there, you're just putting it through the back, and you're going to loop Pearl. Sorry. I'm going to start that again. Okay, so you're sticking your needle through the back of the stitch. And you're going to take the yarn that's attached to the ball. You're going to keep your loose end in your hand so it doesn't get tangled up or anything like that, because you're not knitting with it. You're going to leave it loose and long. So then you're going to take this end and you're going to wrap it around. And as you can see here, I have a small cat chewing on my knitting needles, but that's how you create that second stitch. So you slide it through again and loop around, and then pull it along and loop it over that first needle. So there you've got your 3 stitches. So I'm going to do this again, and you're just going to keep going. So ideally, before you get started, you're going to think, who do I want to make this scarf for? Am I making it for myself? Am I making it for my mom, my sister? Am I making it to donate to somebody or to give to a friend? And you're going to want to think about, is this person a grown-up, or are they a child? So does it need to be a little bit smaller? And what we're going to do, this is called casting on. You're going to keep casting on stitches until you think it's the right width. So I'm going to say that you can probably do anywhere between 50 and 80, depending on how big you want it to be. And you don't want these to be, so as you're looping them through, they don't need to be too tight or anything. You don't want to pull it super tight because it's going to be really hard to knit if you do, but you just want to keep it nice and even tension, a little bit loose so you can easily slide your knitting needle in. You're going to pull it around and cast on. And so you can count your stitches as you go. As you can see here, we've got a few and a cat. So you can count your stitches as you go, or like I tend to do, I watch TV while I do it and I just cast on a bunch and then I go back and I count and make sure I have the right amount. So like I said, you're going to stick the needle through, loop around the long yarn and pull it over your first needle, through the back, loop around and onto the back needle. So once you've got your whole cast on, so imagine that this is 50 some odd stitches and I'm ready to go to the second row of my scarf. So then you would go, then you would go into the back of the stitch the same way, loop around, and this time, instead of pulling the stitch over, you're actually just going to pull this stitch off and you're going to pull it onto that second needle. And then you're going to go into the back of the stitch again, loop around and pull that stitch onto the second needle. So I'm going to have some tutorials posted after so you can rewatch this on YouTube because I know it's a lot to take in rather quickly. But into the back of the stitch, loop around. And so imagine that this is, you know, the full size of a scarf and you're just going to keep going till you have about an inch of stitches going, so not widthwise, but lengthwise. And once you've got about an inch or 3/4 of an inch, we will meet again on Thursday. And that's when we will go over different styles of knit stitches. You'll learn the purl stitch, as she is named after. And we can go through any, like how to keep going and how to make your knitting more refined. But that's a basic cast on. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them now for you. I know it's a little bit hard to see backwards, which is why I'll provide the tutorials. But this is what it would look like from your view. And so again, once you get to that second row, it's just into the back of the stitch. You're going to make sure, remember, you don't want to knit with this loose piece. You want to keep that out of your knitting. And around the back of the needle and off onto the second needle. Into the back of the stitch, loop around, and off the first needle onto the second. Into the back of the stitch, loop around, off the first needle, and into the second. And again, you're just going to keep doing this and keep a nice even tension. You don't want to pull it too tight or too loose and it's going to fall apart or be really have kind of holes in it, which isn't necessarily very nice for wearing out in the cold. And too tight and it's going to get really hard to get your needles in and keep knitting. So one other thing to keep in mind is that it's really important to not have a kitten near you while you're knitting because it makes it tricky. And also if you drop a stitch, so for example, here I have 3 stitches left on my left hand needle. Say for example, I'm knitting and I accidentally, it falls off and you don't want to let it completely drop because you want to keep that stitch whole and get it back on your needles. Because if you drop it, then you're going to start getting big holes in your work. And they're a little bit trickier to fix. So just make sure that you do your best to not drop any stitches and just through the back and around and slide onto the next needle. Through the back, around and slide onto the second needle. And then when you've got it all on the second needle, that becomes your first needle again. So I don't see any questions so far. So I'm just going to keep knitting for a few minutes to see if there are any, but otherwise we will meet next week. So later in the week, into the back and off into the second needle, into the back, loop around, off onto the second needle, I'll try to do a little bit closer here, into the back, around, onto the second. And so into the back, around, onto the second, into the back, around, onto the second. And you're just going to keep right on going. And like I said, you want to have this measure for as long or as wide as you think it needs to be to fit around someone's neck, whoever you're planning to give it to, if you're going to wear it yourself. And that is that. So then you're just going to keep going, and you'll eventually, I think this size would actually fit Miss Pearl here, but that's okay. I will make a full size one so I can catch up with you all on Thursday. And that's when we'll go over different styles of stitches and how to create a pattern in your scarf. So I haven't seen any questions yet. If you are starting your project and your yarn does not look like a nice loose ball like this, but looks like this, it's important that you take it to a local yarn store. So here in Edmonton, that would be the Fiber Nook, where they can spin it into a ball for you so that you can work with it. Because if you try to cast on from this, it becomes very tangled. I've tried it, it did not go well. So you can go to a local yarn store and they can help you. How long did it, so there's a question here. How long did it take me to learn how to knit? Not very long. I actually took a course, or not a course, a class, like an evening class. And I learned how to knit a scarf just like this. And my first one was super wonky. It had holes in it and it had really uneven stitch tension. So it was just really weird looking. But that's okay because I started my second one and my second one was way better. So I actually started knitting because I found that in times of stress or uncertainty, if I was, feeling particularly anxious, it helped me to have my hands busy with something. So if I was watching TV, instead of scrolling on my phone and not really paying attention to what I was watching or not really paying attention to what was on my phone and kind of being torn, I would just knit something really simple so I could focus my attention on what was actually happening. And it helped to sort of relieve some of that fidgetiness that you have when you're a bit stressed. So I learned to knit exactly like this, just on probably actually on these exact needles. And it is quite simple. You do get the hang of it fairly quickly, and your muscle memory will take you through. So this twisted yarn, there's a question here. What is the twisted yarn used for? It is just regular yarn. It's called a skein instead of a ball of yarn. So when it's twisted into a skein, it's just a style of storage. And it's just the way that you store it, and it's nice and squishy and you can see the beautiful colors. But then when you're ready to work with the skein, it has to turn into a ball, or what is called a cake. So that's just hopefully a little bit of background information about yarn for you. But typically if you are new, you kind of use these nice loose balls and they're a bit easier to work with. Thank you for the comment. Whoever said my cat is so cute. She's a little cutie. But if there are no more questions, I will wrap it up for tonight. And I look forward to seeing you guys all again on Thursday, when we will learn how to do another knit stitch and how to develop that pattern in our scarf. Thank you.